Join us on a journey to Vale Silencioso, where fashion designer Helena Mendes finds herself after a career disaster in São Paulo. This heartwarming tale explores how failure can lead to unexpected paths as Helena discovers her true calling among the simple beauty of rural Brazil. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from. The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of the fashion studio in downtown São Paulo. Helena Mendes adjusted her simple cotton blouse and ran her fingers through her curly hair, trying to calm her nerves. At 28, she should have been at the peak of her career, but today felt more like standing at the edge of a cliff. 5 minutes until we start, called out Marcelo, her assistant, checking his watch nervously. Helena nodded, surveying the group of models waiting in the wings. They weren't the typical rail-thin figures that dominated runways. There was Maria, a middle-aged farmer with calloused hands and a warm smile, Carlos, a young man in a wheelchair with bright eyes, and several others who represented the true diversity of Brazil. Real people wearing clothes designed for real lives. "Are you sure about this?" asked Renata, her childhood friend and business partner. "The sponsors are already looking uncomfortable." "I've never been more sure of anything," Helena replied, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. The lights dimmed and the music began. One by one, her models walked the runway. The audience's reaction started with confused whispers that quickly grew into outright laughter and jeers. "What is this, a charity event?" someone called out loudly. Helena felt her face burning as she spotted her father, Judge Roberto Mendes, shifting uncomfortably in his seat beside her mother, Dr. Claudia Mendes, who was already gathering her things, clearly preparing to leave. By the time the final model took her bow, half the audience had walked out. The fashion critics in the front row weren't even trying to hide their disdain, tapping furiously on their phones. "You've really done it this time," Renata whispered, showing Helena her phone screen. A fashion disaster was already trending. The aftermath was swift and brutal. By morning, Helena's face was plastered across every fashion blog and social media platform. Country Fraud screamed one headline, accompanied by unflattering photos. Mendes family embarrassment, renowned judge's daughter, mocks fashion industry. Read another. Even her own cousin, a popular influencer, shared a video laughing about the show. "When you try to be revolutionary but end up ridiculous, sorry cuz, but stick to sketching." 3 days later, Helena sat in her apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers and her phone buzzing with yet another call from a reporter wanting a statement. The fashion line she'd spent years building was in tatters. Sponsors had pulled out overnight. Even the small boutique that had agreed to carry her collection had called to cancel. The doorbell rang, and Helena considered ignoring it until she heard her mother's voice. "Helena, I know you're in there. Open up." With a sigh, Helena unlocked the door. Her mother swept in, immaculate as always in her designer suit, her straight hair perfectly styled. "This can't continue," Claudia said, wrinkling her nose at the state of the apartment. "Your father is furious. Do you know how this reflects on our family? He's up for the Supreme Court nomination next month. Is that all you care about?" Helena asked, her voice cracking. "My career is over and you're worried about Dad's reputation." "Your career," Claudia made air quotes. "Darling, this was never going to work. Fashion is about beauty and aspiration, not," she gestured vaguely, "whatever that show was supposed to be." Helena felt the familiar sting of her mother's dismissal. It had been the same her entire life. Nothing she did was ever enough. Never prestigious enough, never normal enough to please her parents. "I have a solution," Claudia continued, pulling an envelope from her purse. "Your godmother Patricia called. She's invited you to stay at her farm in Val Silencioso for a while. Far from the media, far from this mess. Give it time to blow over." "You want me to hide?" Helena asked incredulously. "I want you to think about your next steps rationally," her mother corrected. "Maybe consider law school when you return. It's not too late to follow a proper path." After her mother left, Helena stared at the envelope. Vale Silencioso, the silent valley. She hadn't seen her godmother since childhood. The farm was in a remote region, known for its traditional farming communities and simple way of life. Her phone buzzed again with a notification. Someone had created a meme of her show with the caption, "When the country fraud should have stayed." in the country. With trembling hands, Helena opened her laptop and booked a bus ticket for the next morning. The journey to Vale Silencioso took nearly 8 hours. As the bus wound through increasingly rural landscapes, Helena pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching city blocks give way to rolling hills and eventually the lush, green valley that gave the region its name. When the bus finally stopped at the small terminal, little more than a covered bench and a ticket counter, a light rain had started to fall. Helena pulled her city coat tighter around her shoulders, but it did little against the fine mist. Her curly hair, which she normally wore proudly loose, now clung damply to her neck as she dragged her suitcases from the luggage compartment. The small terminal was nearly empty. No sign of her godmother. Helena checked her phone. No signal. "Perfect. You must be the city girl. Welcome. Here you'll be treated like a queen." The deep, gentle voice came from behind her. Helena turned to see a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and kind eyes. He wore a simple flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms marked with the unmistakable signs of manual labor. "I'm Caio," he said, extending a hand. "Your godmother Patricia sent me to pick you up. She had to help deliver a calf at the neighbor's farm, but she'll be back for dinner." Helena took his hand hesitantly. "I'm Helena." "I know," he said with a small smile. "News travels fast here even without good cell reception." He picked up her suitcases effortlessly. "My truck's just over there." As they drove through winding dirt roads, the rain picked up. Helena noticed Caio glancing at her occasionally. "So," he finally said, "what brings a city designer to our quiet valley?" Helena stiffened. "How do you know I'm a designer?" "Patricia mentioned it. She's very proud of you." Helena couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped her lips. "Well, she shouldn't be. I'm a professional failure and family disappointment." Caio didn't respond immediately, just nodded thoughtfully as he navigated a particularly muddy stretch of road. "The thing about failure," he finally said, "is that it looks different depending on where you're standing." Before Helena could ask what he meant, the truck rounded a bend and a sprawling farmhouse came into view. It was exactly as she remembered from her childhood visits, a wide porch wrapped around the front, colorful flowers lining the walkway despite the rain. "Here we are," Caio said, parking under a large tree. "Fazenda Esperanza." "Farm of Hope," Helena translated softly. "Yes," Caio nodded. "Patricia says there's always hope here, even for city girls with sad eyes." Helena felt her cheeks warm as she met his gaze. There was something in the way he looked at her, not with pity or judgment, but with a quiet understanding that made her feel suddenly self-conscious. "I should get inside," she mumbled, reaching for the door handle. "Of course," he said quickly, getting out to retrieve her bags. "I'll bring these in for you." The farmhouse was warm and inviting, with hand-woven rugs covering the wooden floors and the smell of fresh bread filling the air. "Patricia left everything ready for you," Caio explained, setting her bags in a cozy bedroom with windows overlooking the valley. "She said to make yourself at home. I live in the caretaker's house down the hill. My grandfather was the caretaker here before me." "Thank you," Helena said, suddenly feeling the weight of exhaustion from the journey. "Get some rest," Caio suggested, heading for the door. "The valley looks different in the morning light. Better." After he left, Helena sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the simple room with its handmade quilt and the vase of wildflowers on the nightstand. So far from the sleek, modern apartment she'd left behind, she unpacked her phone charger from her bag and plugged it in, more out of habit than necessity. No signal meant no more nasty comments, no more calls from reporters, no more disappointed messages from her parents. For the first time in days, she took a deep breath that didn't catch in her throat. That evening, Helena met her godmother Patricia, a calm, robust woman in her 60s with silver hair and the same warm eyes she remembered from childhood. "My dear girl," Patricia said, enveloping Helena in a hug that smelled of earth and lavender. "You've had a rough time, haven't you?" Over a simple but delicious meal of homemade bread, fresh cheese, and vegetable stew, Helena found herself telling Patricia everything. The disastrous fashion show, the public humiliation, her parents' reaction. "They never understood," Helena concluded, pushing her half-eaten food around her plate. They wanted me to be a lawyer or doctor like them, something respectable. And instead, you chose to create. Patricia nodded. That takes courage. Fat. Lot of good it did me, Helena said bitterly. Everyone was right, I'm just a fraud. Patricia reached across the table and took Helena's hand. Tomorrow, I want you to help me in the garden. The soil has a way of washing away the noise from the city. You'll see. That night, Helena slept better than she had in weeks, lulled by the sound of rain on the roof and the complete absence of car horns and sirens. The next morning, true to Caio's words, the valley looked different. The rain had cleared, revealing a panorama of green fields, distant mountains, and a sky so intensely blue it almost hurt to look at it. Helena had just finished helping Patricia collect eggs from the chicken coop when a truck pulled up. Caio stepped out wearing work boots and carrying a crate of seedlings. Good morning, he called, his smile genuine. Patricia, I brought those tomato seedlings you asked for. Perfect timing, Patricia responded. Helena and I were just about to prepare the soil for planting. Helena looked down at her hands, already dirty from the morning's work, and then at her city clothes, expensive jeans and a blouse that had seemed casual in Sao Paulo but felt ridiculously impractical here. Caio followed her gaze and chuckled. Don't worry, the dirt washes off. The memories of planting something that grows, those stay with you. Over the next few days, Helena fell into a routine that felt both foreign and oddly natural. Mornings were spent helping Patricia with chores around the farm, collecting eggs, tending the garden, feeding the few cattle that grazed in the nearby pasture. Afternoons usually brought Caio, who would arrive with supplies or to help with repairs around the property. Helena found herself looking forward to his visits. There was something soothing about watching him work, about the way he moved with such purpose and calm. He never seemed rushed or frustrated, even when things didn't go as planned. You're staring again, Patricia remarked one afternoon as they shelled peas on the porch while Caio repaired a section of fence in the distance. Helena felt her face flush. I'm just not used to seeing someone so content with simple work. Patricia laughed softly. There's nothing simple about what Caio does. That boy knows more about this land than anyone. He could have left years ago, had a scholarship to agricultural college in the city, but he chose to stay. Why? Helena asked, genuinely curious. Ask him yourself, Patricia suggested. He's coming to dinner tonight. That evening, as they shared a meal of roasted chicken and vegetables from the garden, Helena found the courage to ask. Patricia tells me you could have left the valley. Why stay? Caio set down his fork, considering her question. After my parents died, my grandmother raised me here. When she passed, everyone expected me to sell our land and go to the city. The scholarship was my ticket out. He looked out the window at the darkening valley. But this place, it speaks to me. The city offers a different kind of life, but here I can see the direct result of my work. The crops I plant, the animals I raise. It's real in a way I never felt when I visited Sao Paulo. But don't you get bored? Helena asked. There's so much happening in the world beyond this valley. Caio smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Who says I don't know what's happening? I have internet, you know. I read. I watch documentaries. I even follow fashion blogs sometimes. Helena felt her cheeks warm again. Have you seen what happened with me? His expression softened. Yes. And I think those people who criticized, you missed the whole point of what you were trying to do. For the first time since her world had collapsed, Helena felt truly seen, not as the daughter of important parents, not as a fashion disaster, but as someone with ideas and intentions that mattered. That night, as she lay in bed listening to the symphony of night insects and distant cattle, Helena realized she hadn't checked her phone for messages in days. The thought of the city, with its noise and judgment, seemed increasingly distant. A week turned into 2, and Helena found herself changing in subtle ways. Her designer clothes stayed packed away as she adopted the practical attire Patricia lent. Her hands, once carefully manicured, now carried the small calluses of daily work. Even her curly hair, which she'd spent hours trying to tame in the city, now flowed freely in the valley breeze. One afternoon, while helping Caio plant a row of corn, Helena finally asked the question that had been nagging at her. The first day. We met. You said I'd be treated like a queen here. Did Patricia tell you to say that? Kaio looked up, soil clinging to his hands, his expression honest. No, that was just me noticing something. Noticing what? That you carry yourself like someone who's been told they don't belong, he said simply. But here, in the valley, everyone belongs. The land doesn't care who your parents are or what mistakes you've made. It only knows if you care for it honestly. Helena felt something shift inside her, a wall beginning to crumble. My grandmother used to say that true royalty isn't about bloodlines, Kaio continued, turning back to his work. It's about how you treat others and the land that feeds you. As they worked side by side through the afternoon, Helena felt a peace she hadn't known was possible. The world that had seemed so small and constrained in the city now felt vast and full of possibility. That evening, as they walked back to the farmhouse, their shadows long in the setting sun, Kaio stopped suddenly. Look, he said softly, pointing to where a deer and her fawn had emerged from the trees at the edge of the field. Helena held her breath, watching the graceful creatures pause, alert but unafraid. This is why I stay, Kaio whispered. Moments like this. As the deer disappeared back into the forest, Helena realized something with startling clarity. She hadn't thought about her fashion disaster in days. The city's judgment that had once consumed her thoughts now seemed trivial compared to the rhythms of life in Vale Silencioso. And standing beside Kaio, watching the sunset paint the valley in gold, she felt something new taking root. Something that felt surprisingly like hope. 3 weeks into Helena's stay at Vale Silencioso, the rhythm of farm life began to feel like second nature. Each morning she woke with the roosters, no longer needing an alarm clock. Her body, once accustomed to late nights at fashion events, now craved the early morning sunlight and fresh country air. You're becoming a true farm girl, Patricia said, with approval as Helena expertly collected eggs without disturbing the hens. Those city hands of yours are learning quickly. Helena smiled, examining her fingers. The nail polish had long since chipped away, and tiny calluses had formed where she gripped garden tools and carried water buckets. Strangely, she felt more pride in these marks of honest work than she ever had in her perfectly manicured city nails. I never thought I'd enjoy this so much, Helena admitted. In São Paulo, everything was about appearance. Here it's about what actually works. Speaking of work, Patricia said, glancing at her watch, Kaio mentioned he could use some help, planting the new crop of beans today. The forecast says rain tomorrow, so they need to get in the ground. Helena's heart quickened at the mention of Kaio's name. I could go help, she offered, trying to sound casual. I finished the fence painting yesterday. Patricia smiled knowingly, but said nothing as Helena quickly changed into work clothes and headed down the dirt path that led to Kaio's smaller farm. She found him in the field, marking rows with string and wooden stakes. He looked up as she approached, his face breaking into a warm smile that made her stomach flutter. Patricia said you could use some help, Helena called out. Kaio straightened up, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. I never turn down good help, he replied, especially when it comes with such nice company. They worked side by side through the morning, Kaio digging shallow trenches while Helena followed behind, dropping in beans and covering them with soil. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, talking easily about everything and nothing. The weather, childhood memories, favorite foods. I've been wondering, Helena said during a water break, how did your family come to work this land? Patricia mentioned your grandfather was the caretaker of her farm. A shadow crossed Kaio's face briefly. It's a long story. Not all of it happy. I'd like to hear it if you want to tell me, Helena said gently. Kaio sighed, setting down his water jug. My grandfather came to work for Patricia's family when he was just a boy. He was honest and hardworking, and eventually became the head caretaker. This small plot of land was given to him as payment for his years of service. He paused, looking out across the fields. My father was different. He had big dreams, wanted more than this simple life. He got mixed up with some men from the city, started smuggling goods across the state line. He was caught, sent to prison when I was 10. Helena's eyes widened. I had no idea. It was a dark time, Kaio continued. The valley has a long memory. People whispered behind our backs. Called us thieves, said the blood was tainted. His jaw tightened at the memory. My mother died while he was in prison, heart attack, the doctor said, but I think it was heartbreak. My grandmother raised me after that. What happened to your father? Helena asked softly. He was released after 5 years, came back here, tried to make amends, but the shame was too much for him. He started drinking, and one night he drove his truck off the mountain road. Kaio's voice was steady, but pain flickered in his eyes. I was 16 then, determined to restore our family's name, to prove we weren't what people said. Helena reached out impulsively, taking his hand. I'm so sorry. Kaio's fingers closed around hers. Don't be. It shaped me, made me who I am. My grandmother taught me that we can't run from our pasts. We have to face them, rebuild with honesty. Is that why you stayed? To rebuild your family's reputation? Partly, he nodded, but also because I truly love this land. The valley gave me peace when nothing else could. Working the soil, watching things grow, it healed something in me. Helena thought about her own escape from public shame, how different it was from Kaio's approach. She had run away while he had stayed to face judgment and slowly change minds through years of honest work. What about you? Kaio asked, breaking into her thoughts. Will you go back to the city to fashion? The question caught Helena off guard. I don't know. Sometimes I miss designing, creating, but the thought of facing everyone again, she shuddered. What if you didn't have to choose? Kaio suggested. What if you could create here in your own way? Before Helena could respond, they were interrupted by the sound of an approaching vehicle, unusual for the rarely traveled farm road. A sleek black SUV appeared, looking comically out of place on the dusty path. Are you expecting visitors? Helena asked, suddenly anxious. Kaio shook his head, eyes narrowing. No one from around here drives a car like that. The SUV stopped, and a man in his 30s stepped out. Despite the rural setting, he wore designer jeans and an expensive-looking button-down shirt. His hair was perfectly styled, and he carried a professional camera around his neck. Helena's blood ran cold as recognition dawned. Ricardo Alves, she whispered. You know him? Kaio asked. He's a journalist for Estilo magazine, one of the ones who wrote the most vicious articles about my show. Helena instinctively stepped behind Kaio as if she could hide. Ricardo spotted them and smiled broadly, approaching with confident strides. Helena Mendez, I thought that was you. What an unexpected surprise. How did you find me? Helena demanded, her voice shaking slightly. Your mother mentioned you were staying with your godmother, Ricardo replied smoothly. It wasn't hard to track down Patricia Oliveira's farm. Small towns, everyone knows everyone. Kaio stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Helena. What do you want? Ricardo gave Kaio an appraising look. And you are? Kaio Santos. This is my land you're on. Ah, Santos, Ricardo's eyes lit up with recognition. Now that's interesting, the son of Eduardo Santos, right, the smuggler? Kaio's expression hardened, but he said nothing. Ricardo turned back to Helena. I'm here for an exclusive interview. From runway to runaway, fashion designer Helena Mendez flees to countryside after public disaster. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Get off my property, Kaio said, his voice dangerously quiet. Come on, it's a human interest piece, Ricardo persisted, addressing Helena. Your fans are curious. What happened to the promising designer who crashed and burned? Is this a temporary retreat or a permanent surrender? And now I find you with the son of a convicted criminal. That adds some spice to the story. Helena felt anger building inside her, replacing the initial fear. I have nothing to say to you or your magazine. Are you sure? Ricardo pulled out his phone. Social media is still talking about you, you know. Your show has become a case study in fashion schools, how not to challenge industry norms. Wouldn't you like to tell your side? Helena's chin lifted. My side? You never cared about my side when you were writing those articles. You called my models fashion charity cases, and me a delusional rich girl playing farmer fashion. Ricardo, had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I admit I was harsh, but that's why I'm here, to give you a chance to respond, to show the world what you're doing now. The world doesn't need to know what I'm doing, Helena replied firmly. I'm not here for a publicity stunt or a redemption story. Everyone loves a comeback narrative, Ricardo pressed. Think about it, the humbled designer finding inspiration in the simplicity of rural life. It could relaunch your career. Caio stepped forward. She asked you to leave now. Ricardo sighed, lowering his camera. Fine, but Helena, think about what I said. One exclusive interview and photo shoot could change the narrative. Here's my card. He placed it on a nearby fence post. Call me when you're ready to return to the real world. They watched in silence. As Ricardo got back into his SUV and drove away, the dust from the road settling in his wake. Are you okay? Caio asked gently when the car was out of sight. Helena realized she was trembling. He knows where I am now, and he knows about your father. He'll write about it whether I talk to him or not. Caio's expression was unreadable. Does that bother you? My past? Helena looked at him in surprise. No, of course not. I'm worried about what he'll write about you, how he'll twist things. I've lived with whispers my whole life, Caio said, quietly. Words can't hurt me anymore. But Helena wasn't so sure. The fashion world that had built her up and torn her down had thrived on words and images, on crafting narratives that could make or break reputations. And now Ricardo had connected her to Caio, threatening to drag his painful past into the spotlight alongside her public failure. The peace she had found in Val Silencioso suddenly felt fragile. That evening at dinner, Helena told Patricia about Ricardo's visit. I should have known Claudia would tell someone where you were, Patricia sighed, referring to Helena's mother. She never could resist a chance to appear helpful to the press. I'm so sorry, Helena said miserably. Now I've brought my problems. Here to you and Caio. Patricia reached across the table to pat Helena's hand. Don't worry about me, dear. I've known Ricardo's family for years. His grandmother used to sell eggs in the market. He may act like a big city journalist now, but he knows better than to cross me. But what about Caio? Helena asked. Ricardo could drag up all that old pain about his father. It's not fair. Caio is stronger than you think, Patricia assured her. He spent years rebuilding his family's reputation through honest work. The valley respects him now. Later, unable to sleep, Helena sat on the porch. Swing, wrapped in a hand-knit blanket against the night chill. The moon cast silver light across the valley, and crickets provided a gentle soundtrack to her troubled thoughts. The screen door creaked, and Patricia joined her on the swing, 2 steaming mugs in hand. Chamomile tea, she said, passing one to Helena, my mother's cure for sleepless nights. They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, sipping their tea. You care for him, don't you? Patricia finally asked. Caio. Helena felt her cheeks warm. Is it that obvious? Patricia smiled. Only to someone who's known you since you were born. It doesn't make sense, Helena confessed. We're from completely different worlds. I've only known him a few weeks, and my life is a mess right now. The heart doesn't check timing or backgrounds before it decides, Patricia said wisely. And sometimes the people who seem most different from us are exactly who we need. Helena stared into her tea. What if Ricardo writes his story? What if he connects me to Caio, drags his name through the mud, just to make my story more sensational? Then you'll face it together, Patricia said simply. Or apart. That's your choice to make. I don't know if I'm brave enough, Helena whispered. The last time I stood up for what I believed in, I lost everything. Patricia's eyes were kind but firm. Did you? Or did you just lose the things that weren't meant for you in the first place? The question lingered in Helena's mind as she finally returned to bed, drifting off to sleep with thoughts of Caio, of city lights versus starlight, of what it meant to lose and find oneself. The next morning dawned with dark clouds and the promised rain. Helena stood at the kitchen window, watching fat droplets splatter against the glass. Perfect day for indoor projects, Patricia announced, setting a basket of colorful fabric scraps on the table. I've been meaning to teach you how to quilt. Helena fingered the pieces of fabric, some new, some clearly salvaged from well-worn garments. "These patterns are beautiful," she said, professional interest sparked. "So simple but expressive." "Maria, Silva weaves them," Patricia explained. "She's been making fabric for the Valley families for 40 years, uses natural dyes from plants she grows herself." Helena examined a particularly vibrant blue square. "This is incredible craftsmanship. In the city, this would sell for hundreds." "Maria doesn't do it for money," Patricia said, threading a needle. "She does it because it's her gift to share. Everyone here has something to offer. Caio grows the best corn, João makes furniture, I help with the animals. We trade and share as..." The morning progressed. Helena found herself enjoying the methodical work of quilting, the way simple pieces came together to form something new and beautiful. It reminded her of designing clothing, but without the pressure of trends or critics. "No," Patricia said casually as they worked. "The Valley Festival is coming up next month. Every family brings something to share. Food, crafts, music." "That sounds lovely," Helena replied. "Maria usually brings her fabrics," Patricia continued, "but her arthritis has been bad this year. She mentioned she doesn't have enough new pieces to display." Helena looked up, catching the hint in Patricia's voice. "Are you suggesting..." "Just thinking aloud," Patricia smiled innocently. "But you do have a gift with fabrics and design, and you've been learning about our valley ways. Might be interesting to see what you could create, combining your fashion knowledge with local traditions." The idea took root in Helena's mind, growing throughout the day. By evening, when the rain had stopped and Caio came by with fresh milk from his cows, she was bursting with excitement. "I want to make something for the festival," she told him as they walked along the edge of the now muddy fields. "Traditional valley fabrics, but designed for everyday people, celebrating their work and lives." Caio's face lit up. "That sounds perfect. Maria would love to work with you. She's been saying for years that the younger generation needs to learn the old ways before they're forgotten. Do you think people would accept it?" "Accept me?" Helena asked hesitantly. "I'm still an outsider." Caio stopped walking, turning to face her. "You're only an outsider if you choose to be," he said softly. "The Valley welcomes anyone who respects its ways, who contributes honestly." He hesitated, then added, "I've seen how you've changed since you arrived. How you notice things now, the way the light hits the cornfields in the evening, how the bread tastes different when the wheat is fresh ground." Helena felt something shift between them, the air suddenly thick with unspoken feelings. "Caio, about what Ricardo said, about your father." "It doesn't matter," he interrupted gently. "The past is the past. What matters is what we build now." His eyes held hers. "And I think you're building something beautiful here, Helena." Before she could respond, a raindrop fell, then another. The sky had darkened again, threatening a second downpour. "We should get back," Caio said, taking her hand to help her across a muddy patch. But neither of them moved right away, their hands remaining joined even after the treacherous spot was navigated. Helena felt the rough calluses on his palm, so different from the soft hands of the men she'd known in the city. These were hands that built, that grew, that cared for living things. The rain began to fall in earnest, but still they stood, caught, in a moment that felt like a turning point. "Helena," Caio said, his voice barely audible above the patter of raindrops, "I know you might go back to the city someday, but I want you to know that here, in this valley, you've already made a difference. To the land, to the people," he paused, "to me." Helena felt tears welling up, mingling with the rain on her cheeks. No one in her life, not her critical parents, not her fair-weather fashion friends, had ever made her feel as valued as this man who measured worth by character rather than credentials. "I don't know what my future holds," she admitted, "but I know that right now I don't want to be anywhere else but here." Lightning flashed, illuminating Caio's face, his eyes intent on hers, droplets clinging to his eyelashes. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed his lips gently to hers. The kiss was brief, sweet, and more profound than any Helena had experienced before. When they broke apart, both were smiling, despite being drenched. "By the rain, we really should get inside," Caio laughed, keeping hold of her hand as they ran toward the farmhouse. As they reached the porch, breathless and dripping, Helena felt a certainty she hadn't experienced since before her fashion show disaster. This moment, this place, this man, they were real in a way her city life had never been. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Helena split her time between helping with farm chores and her new project for the festival. She visited Maria Silva, the elderly weaver, who welcomed her with suspicious curiosity that quickly turned to delight when Helena showed genuine interest in learning. The traditional techniques. "These are the patterns my grandmother taught me," Maria explained, showing Helena how different weaves created textures that served practical purposes for farm work. This tight weave for durability, this looser one for summer clothing. Helena absorbed it all, her designer's mind seeing possibilities that merged function with beauty. With Maria's guidance, she began creating simple garments that honored the valley traditions while incorporating her own aesthetic sensibilities. Caio visited often, sometimes helping with the farm work, sometimes just sitting with Helena in the evening as she sketched new designs. Their relationship deepened with each passing day, built on shared work and growing understanding. "These are beautiful," he said one evening, looking through her sketches. "They look like the valley feels." Helena smiled at the compliment. "That's exactly what I'm trying to capture. Not fashion for runways, but clothes that tell the stories of the people who wear them." As the festival approached, word spread about Helena's project. Local women began visiting the farm, some bringing fabric scraps or old garments, others coming to watch and offer suggestions. Helena listened to their stories, incorporating elements that represented their lives and work. "My husband has been a beekeeper for 40 years, said one elderly woman, showing Helena a worn jacket. "The pockets always tear from carrying his tools." Helena redesigned the jacket with reinforced pockets, positioned for easy access, and added subtle embroidery of honeycomb patterns as a nod to the man's lifelong work. For a young mother, she created a practical dress with hidden nursing access and pockets deep enough for all the items a busy parent needs to carry. Each piece was a collaboration, a marriage of Helena's technical skills and the valley residents' practical knowledge. And with each creation, Helena felt herself becoming part of the community, her city identity receding like a tide going out. But Ricardo's threat lingered in the back of her mind. Would he return with his camera and probing questions? Would he expose Caio's family history alongside her own public failure, tainting their budding happiness with old shame? One afternoon, as Helena and Caio walked through his cornfields checking the growth of the young plants, she finally voiced her fears. "What if he does write that story, Caio? What if he tries to hurt you to make his article more sensational?" Caio was quiet for a moment, running his hand along the silky corn tassels. "There was a time when that would have terrified me," he admitted. "When I was younger, I lived in constant fear that someone would mention my father, remind everyone of our shame." He looked at her, his expression open and vulnerable. "But I'm not that boy anymore. My father made mistakes, but they weren't my mistakes. I've built my own reputation here, season by season, crop by crop." "I wish I had your courage," Helena said softly. "You do," Caio replied. "You showed it when you put real people on that runway, when you challenged the fashion world's narrow idea of beauty, and you're showing it now, creating something new here." Despite your fears, he took her hand, his expression serious. "Helena, whatever Ricardo writes, whatever the city thinks of us, it doesn't change who we are. Here in this valley, we know the truth of each other." Helena felt something settle in her heart as she looked across the fields to the mountains beyond. The valley that had initially seemed like a hiding place had become something else entirely, a place of growth, of possibility. And standing beside Caio, feeling the strength of his hand in hers, Helena realized she was no longer running from her past. Instead, for the first time in her life, she was running toward a future that felt authentically her own. The morning of the Valley Festival arrived with perfect weather, clear blue skies and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers across the fields. Helena woke early, her stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "Today's the big day," Patricia said, setting a mug of coffee on the nightstand as Helena sat up in bed. "The whole valley will be at the town square by noon." Helena nodded, suddenly questioning her decision to display her creations. What if they don't like them? What if they think I'm just a city girl playing dress-up with their traditions? Patricia sat on the edge of the bed. "Helena, I've watched you these past weeks. You've learned from Maria. You've listened to everyone's stories. These aren't costumes, they're garments made with respect and understanding." Helena took a deep breath. "You're right. I'm just nervous." "As you should be," Patricia smiled. "It means you care about doing right by these people." After breakfast, they loaded Helena's creations, carefully wrapped in clean sheets, into Patricia's old truck. Caio arrived just as they were finishing, his own truck filled with crates of fresh vegetables for the festival. "Ready for your debut?" he asked, helping Helena secure the last bundle. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. Their eyes met, and the warm smile he gave her steadied her nerves. The drive to town was filled with anticipation. As they approached, Helena could see colorful tents and banners already set up in the town square. People moved about with purpose, arranging displays of food, crafts, and local products. "The Santos corn has arrived," someone called out as Caio parked his truck. Several farmers came to help unload his crates, clapping him on the back and examining his produce with appreciative eyes. Helena watched the easy camaraderie, the obvious respect people had for Caio. This was the reputation he had built, season after season, overcoming the shadow of his father's mistakes through honest work and integrity. "Helena, over here!" "Maria." Silva waved from a tent where several looms were displayed. "I saved space for your creations." With Patricia and Caio's help, Helena arranged her garments on simple wooden mannequins borrowed from the town's only clothing store. As she worked, she felt eyes on her, curious glances from locals who had heard about the city designer staying at Patricia's farm. "Is it true you had a fashion show in São Paulo?" asked a teenage girl who had stopped to watch. Her eyes were wide with fascination. Helena hesitated, the memory of that disastrous day still painful. "Yes, I did. And you put real people in. It not just skinny models." The girl's expression was earnest. "That's right," Helena replied, surprised that the news had reached even this remote valley. "I wanted to show that fashion should be for everyone, not just one type of body." The girl nodded approvingly. "That's cool. My mom says I'm too big to be a model, but I love designing clothes." Helena felt a pang of recognition. This young girl facing the same narrow beauty standards that had always frustrated her. "You know what? I'd love to see your design sometime." The girl's face lit up. "Really? That would be amazing." As the girl skipped away, Helena caught Caio watching her with a soft expression. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he smiled, "just seeing the Queen of the Valley in her element." By midday, the festival was in full swing. Music played from a small stage where local musicians took turns performing. The aroma of traditional foods filled the air, and laughter and conversation created a lively backdrop. Helena stood nervously by her display as people began to circulate through the craft tents. Maria sat nearby, demonstrating weaving techniques to interested onlookers. "These are Helena's designs," the older woman announced proudly to anyone who stopped. "She's combined our valley traditions with city knowledge." To Helena's surprise and relief, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Women examined the reinforced pockets and practical cuts with approving nods. Men appreciated the durability built into work shirts and jackets. "This reminds me of the clothes my grandmother used to make," one elderly woman said, touching a dress, with tears in her eyes. "But better. It moves with you, not against you." As the afternoon progressed, Helena found herself surrounded by valley residents, all eager to share their stories and offer suggestions for future designs. The teenage girl returned with her mother, both listening intently as Helena explained how she adapted traditional patterns for modern needs. "You should teach a class," the mother suggested. "Many of our young people are forgetting the old ways, but they might listen to someone who can show how tradition can be practical for today." The idea took root in Helena's mind, a new possibility she hadn't considered before. She was discussing the details of such a class when she noticed a stir at the edge of the festival. Looking up, her heart sank as she recognized the sleek black SUV parking by the town hall. Ricardo had returned, camera in hand, his city clothes standing out starkly among the casual festival attire. "Ignore him," Maria advised, noticing Helena's expression. "He's always been a troublemaker, even as a boy." But Helena couldn't ignore the knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. Ricardo was making his way through the crowd, stopping occasionally to take photos, his professional smile in place as he asked questions of the locals. "I should warn Caio," Helena said, excusing herself from the conversation. She found him by his vegetable display, deep in conversation with an older farmer about irrigation techniques. The smile he gave her when he spotted her approach warmed her heart, despite her worry. "Ricardo is here," she said quietly when she reached him. Caio's expression grew serious, but he nodded calmly. "I saw him arrive. Don't worry, Helena. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The simple promise, delivered with such quiet confidence, steadied her. This man who had faced judgment his entire life wasn't running or hiding, and neither would she. As if sensing their conversation, Ricardo appeared, camera raised. "Well, well," he said, lowering the device with a practiced smile. "The designer and the farmer. What a charming tableau." "What do you want, Ricardo?" Helena asked directly, standing straighter. "Just doing my job," he replied easily. "Documenting a fascinating cultural event, and of course following up on our conversation from the other day." He gestured around the festival. "I must say, this isn't what I expected. When I heard you were hiding out in the country, I pictured you holed up in some rustic cabin, licking your wounds." "I'm not hiding," Helena said firmly. "And this isn't a retreat, it's a new chapter." Ricardo's eyebrows rose. "A new chapter? So you're giving up on fashion altogether?" "No," Helena replied, surprising herself with her certainty. "I'm redefining what fashion means to me." Ricardo glanced at her display across the square. "Those designs, they're yours?" "Yes," Helena lifted her chin. "Made with local fabrics, designed for the people who live and work here." Ricardo studied her for a moment, then raised his camera again. "Mind if I take some photos? This might be a more interesting story than I thought." Before Helena could respond, Caio stepped forward. "Actually, we do mind. This festival is about the valley and its people, not about creating sensational headlines for your magazine." Ricardo lowered his camera, his expression cooling. "The public has a right to know what happened to Helena Mendez after her very public failure, and they might be interested to learn she's found comfort with the son of a convicted criminal." Helena felt Caio tense beside her, but his voice remained steady. "You're right about one thing. My father was a criminal. He made mistakes that hurt many people, including his family. I've never hidden from that truth, but I've spent my life building something different, something honest." He looked at Helena, then back at Ricardo. "If you want to write about that, about redemption and second chances, then maybe your story has value, but if you're just looking for scandal, you won't find it here." Ricardo seemed taken aback by Caio's directness. He looked between them, then at the festival around them, the genuine community, the traditions being celebrated and preserved. "What if," Helena said suddenly, "I offered you a different exclusive, not about my escape or Caio's past, but about what we're building here? A story about fashion that serves real people, that honors tradition while embracing change." Ricardo considered this, professional interest visibly piqued. "You're suggesting an article about sustainable, community-based fashion. That's actually on trend right now. Major designers are talking about returning to artisanal methods, ethical production." "Exactly," Helena nodded, "but they're mostly just talking. Here, we're doing it. These garments are made with locally grown fibers, dyed with plants from these hills, designed with the input of the people who will wear them." Ricardo tapped his camera thoughtfully. It could work. Fashion revolutionary Helena Mendez finds new inspiration in traditional community. Much better angle than the fallen designer narrative I had planned. Helena exchanged glances with Caio, who gave a subtle nod of support. "One condition," Helena said firmly. "The story focuses on the work, the community, the future, not on digging up painful pasts, Mine or Caio's? Ricardo hesitated, then extended his hand. Deal. But I still want the exclusive when you're ready to fully tell your story. How the disaster of your São Paulo show led you here. Helena shook his hand. Maybe someday, when it's not about scandal, but about journey. As Ricardo moved away to take photos of the festival, Caio turned to Helena with a mixture of admiration and concern. Are you sure about this? Letting him back into your life, even professionally? Helena took a deep breath. I've been running from what happened, pretending I could just disappear and forget. But that's not how life works. Better to face it on my terms, to reshape the narrative into something true. Caio's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. I'm proud of you, he said simply. The rest of the festival day passed in a blur of conversations, demonstrations, and shared meals. As evening approached, lanterns were lit around the square, and musicians gathered for the traditional dance that would close the celebration. Helena sat with Patricia at a table near the dance area, watching as couples began to form circles for the first dance. Your creations were the hit of the festival, Patricia said, sipping a cup of locally made wine. Maria hasn't stopped bragging about her star pupil. Helena smiled, feeling a deep contentment. It felt right, sharing them here. First. Not on some runway with critics watching, but with the people who inspired them. Patricia nodded toward the dance floor, where Caio was approaching. Speaking of inspiration, he stood before them, hand extended to Helena. May I have this dance? City girl. Helena laughed at the nickname that had once seemed like a barrier, but now felt like an endearment. I don't know the steps, she admitted. I'll teach you, he promised, drawing her to her feet. It's all about feeling the rhythm of the valley. Under the starlit sky, surrounded by the community that had welcomed her, Helena followed Caio's lead. The traditional dance was simple but joyful, with partners circling each other, coming together then apart in a pattern that mirrored the seasons of planting and harvest. See? You're a natural, Caio murmured as they moved in time with the music. Helena found herself thinking about the different worlds they came from. Her with her fashion education and city upbringing, him with his deep connection to the land and its rhythms. Yet here, under the same stars, they had found common ground. The night was magical, the perfect conclusion to a day that had marked a turning point. As the festival wound down and people began heading home, Helena felt a newfound clarity about her path forward. Back at the farmhouse, as she and Patricia unloaded her creations, Helena's phone buzzed with an incoming call, the first time she'd paid attention to it in weeks. The screen displayed her mother's name. Helena hesitated, then answered. Hello, Mother. Helena, finally. Claudia's voice was sharp with irritation. I've been trying to reach you for days. Is it true you're giving an interview to Estilo magazine about some country fashion project? Helena sighed, unsurprised that news had traveled so quickly. Ricardo was at the Valley Festival today. We discussed a possible feature, yes. Well, thank goodness, her mother replied. It's about time you started thinking about rebuilding your career. Your father and I were beginning to worry you'd given up entirely. I haven't given up, Helena clarified. I'm just redefining what success means to me. There was a pause on the other end. What does that mean exactly? You're not planning to stay in that backwater permanently, are you? The dismissive way her mother referred to the valley, a place that had shown Helena more acceptance and genuine community than she'd ever known in the city, sparked a flame of indignation. This backwater has taught me more about authentic design in 2 months than 4 years of fashion school, Helena replied evenly. And yes, I am considering staying. Don't be ridiculous, Claudia scoffed. What about your career, your connections, your future? My future is what I make it, Helena said firmly. And right now it looks more promising here than it ever did in São Paulo. Is this about that farmer? Her mother's voice dripped with disdain. Patricia mentioned you'd been spending time with the caretaker's grandson. Helena, really? I thought I raised you better than to fall for the first rural Romeo who— His name is Caio, Helena interrupted, her voice sharp. And he has shown me more respect and understanding than anyone I knew in the city, including my own family. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. "I see," Claudia finally said, her tone icy. "Well, when you're ready to have a serious conversation about your future, your father and I will be here. In the meantime, try not to make any more impulsive decisions. Good night, Helena." The call ended, leaving Helena staring at her phone, a mixture of anger and old hurt washing over her. Patricia appeared in the doorway, concern on her face. "Everything all right?" Helena set the phone down with deliberate care. "My mother, being my mother." Patricia nodded understandingly. "Claudia always did have very specific ideas about the right path. She thinks I'm throwing my life away." Helena said, sinking onto the couch. "That staying here, working with local fabrics, being with Caio, it's all some kind of failure or rebellion." Patricia sat beside her. "And what do you think?" Helena was quiet for a moment, considering the question. "I think I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. Not the polished, perfect daughter my parents wanted. Not the trendy designer the fashion world expected. Just Helena, who loves creating clothes that mean something, who feels connected to the earth and its rhythms, who..." She paused, a soft smile forming. "Who is falling in love with a man who sees her. Really sees her." Patricia patted her hand. "Sometimes the hardest thing is disappointing the people who raised us, but the alternative is disappointing yourself." Helena leaned her head on her godmother's shoulder, grateful for the wisdom and acceptance she'd found in this unlikely refuge. The next morning, she woke to the sound of a truck pulling up outside. Looking out her window, she saw Caio unloading wooden planks and tools. Curious, she dressed quickly and went outside. "What's all this?" Caio looked up with a smile that still made her heart skip. "Good morning to you too," he teased. "This is for a project I've been thinking about." "What kind of project?" He set down the planks and approached her. "I was thinking about what you said yesterday, about teaching classes on traditional textiles and modern design. You'll need a proper workspace, something bigger than Patricia's dining table." Helena looked at the materials, realization dawning. "You're going to build me a studio?" "If you want it," he said, suddenly seeming uncertain. "I know you haven't decided how long you're staying, and I don't want to pressure you, but..." Helena silenced him with a kiss, not caring who might see. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and pleasure. "I want it," she said softly. "I want to stay, Caio. Not because I'm running from something, but because I've found something worth staying for." The joy that spread across his face was answer enough. They spent the day planning and beginning construction on a simple but beautiful studio space at the edge of Patricia's property, where the morning light would stream through large windows. Helena sketched her vision while Caio measured and cut, their collaboration as natural as their growing relationship. During a break, sitting on the porch with cold lemonade, Helena shared the conversation with her mother. "She's always had my life mapped out," Helena explained. "The right schools, the right career, the right kind of success. Anything that deviated from her plan was seen as a failure." Caio listened thoughtfully. "Parents often think they know what's best for their children. Sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're trying to live through us," Helena finished. "My mother wanted to be a designer herself once, did you know that? But her parents insisted she become a doctor instead. So she channeled all those dreams into me." "And now you're making your own choices," Caio observed. "Trying to," Helena agreed. "It's harder than I thought it would be, disappointing her, even when I know I'm doing what's right for me." Caio's hand found hers. "The strongest trees in the valley are the ones that bend with the wind but keep their roots firm. You're finding your roots, Helena. The rest will follow." The next few days fell into a pleasant rhythm. Mornings were spent helping with farm chores, afternoons working on the studio construction. In the evenings, Helena sketched new designs inspired by the valley and its people, occasionally consulting with Maria about traditional techniques she wanted to incorporate. Ricardo called midweek, discussing the direction of his article. To Helena's surprise, he seemed genuinely interested in the sustainable, community-based approach to fashion she was developing. "I spoke with my editor," he said. "We want to do a 6-page spread, your designs photographed in the natural settings that inspired them, interviews with the local artisans you're working with." "That sounds perfect," Helena agreed. relief in her voice. Perhaps this wouldn't be the hatchet job she had feared. "We'll send a photography team next week," Ricardo continued. "And Helena, thank you for giving me a chance to tell a different kind of story. I think this one might actually matter." The days passed in a blur of creativity and purpose. The studio took shape under Caio's skilled hands, and Helena's collection grew, each piece a reflection of the valley and its inhabitants. She found herself rising with the sun, eager to begin each day's work, falling into bed at night with a deep satisfaction she'd never known in the city. And through it all, her relationship with Caio deepened. They shared quiet moments watching sunsets, passionate discussions about sustainable farming and ethical fashion, comfortable silences working side by side. Helena found herself falling more in love with him each day, not just with his kindness and integrity, but with the life he represented, a life of purpose and connection. One evening, as they walked along the river that bordered Caio's property, he grew unusually quiet. "Everything okay?" Helena asked, concerned by his silence. He nodded, picking up a flat stone and skipping it across the water. "Just thinking about how much has changed since you arrived. How much you've changed this place." "Changed me? I think you've got that backward," Helena smiled. "This valley, you've changed me. Shown me what really matters." Caio turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Helena, I know it's only been a few months. I know we come from different worlds. And I know your life might still pull you back to the city someday." Helena started to protest, but he gently continued, "Let me finish. I'm not asking for promises. I just want you to know that whatever happens, meeting you has been the greatest gift of my life. You've helped me see my home, my work through new eyes. You've made everything more beautiful." Helena felt tears welling up at the raw honesty in his voice. "Caio, I love you," he said simply. "Not the city designer or the valley newcomer, just you, Helena, with your creative mind and generous heart." The words she'd been feeling for weeks now rose easily to her lips. "I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere." He pulled her into his arms then, kissing her with a tenderness that spoke of promises and possibilities. Standing by the river, as the setting sun painted the valley in gold, Helena felt a certainty she had never known before. This was where she belonged. Not because she was running from failure or hiding from judgment, but because she had found her true home. In this valley, in this work that combined her talents with genuine purpose, and in the arms of this man who loved her for exactly who she was. The magazine photography team arrived the following week, turning the quiet farm into a hub of activity. Patricia watched with amusement as the city professionals set up equipment in her barn, kitchen, and fields. "They're making quite a fuss," she remarked to Helena as they watched a photographer arrange lighting around one of Helena's models, a local grape harvester wearing a dress designed specifically for vineyard work. "That's the fashion world for you," Helena replied with a laugh. "Everything has to be just so." Ricardo arrived midway through the shoot, nodding approvingly as he reviewed the preliminary photos. "This is going to be spectacular," he told Helena. "Authentic but elevated, exactly what the industry needs right now." As the day progressed, Helena found herself relaxing into her old role as creative director, guiding the team to capture the essence of her new work. It felt different from her previous fashion experiences, less about ego and image, more about showcasing the harmony between garments, wearers, and environment. Caio stopped by in the afternoon, bringing fresh fruit for the crew. Helena watched with pride as he spoke easily with the city professionals, neither intimidated by their sophistication nor trying to impress them. He was simply himself, grounded, genuine, kind. "Your boyfriend is quite the charmer," one of the stylists commented to Helena. "So authentic. Most city guys try so hard to seem natural, but he's the real deal." Helena smiled, watching as Caio showed the photographer the best angle to capture the mountains at sunset. "Yes, he is." The photo shoot wrapped up as the light faded, the team packing up with promises to send preliminary layouts within the week. Ricardo stayed behind, accepting Patricia's invitation to dinner with an eagerness that suggested he wasn't entirely ready to return to city life. Over a meal of farm-fresh food, the conversation flowed easily. Ricardo shared industry gossip, Patricia told stories of Helena as a child, and Caio discussed the challenges facing small-scale farmers in a changing climate. "This is what I miss in the city," Ricardo admitted as they finished dessert. "Real conversation, real food, real connections." "You're welcome to visit anytime," Patricia offered. "The valley has a way of reminding people what matters." Later, as Helena walked Ricardo to his car, he turned to her with unexpected seriousness. "You know, when I first came here, I thought I was going to write a cautionary tale about a designer who couldn't handle failure," he confessed. "But what I found instead was an inspiration. You're not running from the fashion world, Helena. You're reinventing it." The sincerity in his voice touched her. "Thank you, Ricardo. That means a lot, especially coming from someone who once called my work a delusional farm fantasy." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was wrong, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it when this article comes out." As his car disappeared down the dirt road, Helena felt a chapter closing, not just on her past failure, but on her fear of facing it. Whatever happened next, she would meet it with the strength she'd found in Vale Silencioso. Back at the farmhouse, she found Caio waiting on the porch swing. "Is Ricardo gone?" he asked, making room for her beside him. "Yes," Helena sat, nestling against his side as he put an arm around her. "He said the article should be out in next month's issue." "Are you nervous about it?" Helena considered the question. "A little, but not like before. Whatever they say about my work, I know its true value now. That's something no critic can take away." Caio pressed a kiss to her temple. "That's my queen." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell over the valley, the first stars appearing in the clear night sky. Helena thought about the path that had led her here, the painful public failure that had seemed like an ending but had actually been the beginning of something far more meaningful. "I've been thinking," she said eventually. "Dangerous," Caio teased, earning a playful swat on his arm. "I'm serious," Helena laughed. "I've been thinking about what's next. The studio will be finished soon. I've been talking with Maria about teaching workshops on textile traditions, and there's a vacant storefront in town that would be perfect for a small shop." Caio listened attentively. "You're planning to stay then, for good?" Helena turned to face him. "I am. This is where I want to build my life, Caio, where I want to create, to teach, to love." The last word was soft, carrying the weight of her commitment. His eyes searched hers. "Are you sure? The article might reopen doors for you in the city. You could have your career back, on your terms this time." "I don't want my old career back," Helena said firmly. "I want a new one, here, with these people, this land." She touched his face gently. "With you, if you'll have me." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "If I'll have you, Helena, you've become as necessary to me as rain to the fields." He took her hands in his expression growing serious. "I know it's soon. I know there's so much still to figure out. But I need you to know that I see a future with you, building something together that honors both our paths." Helena felt tears of joy welling up. "That's what I want too." Under the starlit sky and the quiet of the valley that had healed them both, they held each other close. The city designer who had found her true calling, and the farmer who had shown her what it meant to grow roots in the place where you belong. As they sat in this perfect moment of understanding, Helena found herself thinking of the young girl at the festival who had worried she was too big to be a model. In that moment, she made a silent promise to create a world where no one felt excluded from beauty, where fashion served people rather than the other way around. And she knew, with Caio beside her and the valley spreading out around them, that she had finally found her throne, not one of status or acclaim, but of purpose, love, and belonging. The Queen of Silent Valley was home at last. 1 month after the photo shoot, Helena stood in her newly completed studio, morning light streaming through the large windows Caio had installed. The space was simple but beautiful, wooden floors, salvaged from an old barn, walls painted a warm cream color, spacious tables for cutting fabric and displaying designs. Along one wall hung a collection of Maria's traditional weavings, inspiration and heritage made visible. Helena ran her hand across the smooth surface of the workbench Caio had crafted for her, feeling the care in every polished inch. This space represented their shared vision, his craftsmanship and her creativity coming together to create something neither could have built alone. The sound of tires on the gravel driveway pulled her from her thoughts. Patricia appeared in the doorway holding an envelope. "It's here," she announced, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "The mailman just delivered it." Helena's heart jumped as she recognized the sleek packaging of Estilo magazine. This was the issue containing Ricardo's article about her work in Val Silencioso, the first public glimpse of her new direction since the disastrous runway show in São Paulo. "Have you opened it?" Helena asked, suddenly nervous. Patricia shook her head. "I thought you might want to do the honors. Shall we wait for Caio?" Helena nodded, clutching the unopened magazine. "He should be here soon. He wanted to finish the irrigation system before coming over." As if summoned by her words, Caio's truck appeared, dust billowing behind it as he drove up the farm road. Helena's heart lightened at the sight of him, as it did every time he appeared. These past months had transformed her life in ways she never could have imagined, and this man was at the center of that transformation. "Perfect timing," Patricia said as Caio entered the studio, wiping his hands on a worn bandana. The magazine just arrived. Caio's eyes found Helena's, a question in them, ready to see it. Taking a deep breath, Helena carefully opened the package. The glossy cover featured a famous actress, but a sidebar headline caught her eye immediately. Helena Mendes, Fashion Revolution in the Countryside. With slightly trembling hands, she turned to the table of contents and found the page number. The article began with a full-page photograph that took her breath away. One of the valley women wearing Helena's design, standing in a field of wildflowers with mountains rising majestically in the background. The woman's face glowed with natural beauty and confidence, so different from the usual fashion models. "It's beautiful," Patricia murmured, looking over Helena's shoulder. Helena began reading Ricardo's article aloud. 6 months ago. Fashion. Designer Helena Mendes made headlines for all the wrong reasons when her runway show featuring non-traditional models was ridiculed by industry insiders. Today, in the remote farming community of Valle Silencioso, she is making headlines again. But this time she's redefining what fashion can and should be. Far from the bright lights and sharp elbows of São Paulo's fashion scene, Mendes has created a collection that merges centuries-old textile traditions with modern, functional design. Working alongside local artisans, particularly master weaver Maria Silva, she has developed garments that honor both the cultural heritage and practical needs of rural communities. What makes this collection revolutionary isn't just its aesthetic beauty, but its fundamental rethinking of fashion's purpose. These aren't garments created for runways or red carpets. They're designed for real lives, real work, real bodies. And yet, paradoxically, they contain more authentic beauty than most high-fashion collections this season. Helena paused, emotion making it difficult to continue. Caio gently took the magazine from her hands, picking up where she left off. The journey from disgraced city designer to rural fashion pioneer wasn't planned, Mendes admits. "I came to the valley to escape," she tells me over coffee at her godmother's farmhouse. "But instead I found my true purpose. These people, this land, they taught me what really matters in design: function, durability, and a beauty that comes from authenticity rather than artificial standards." That philosophy is evident in every piece of her collection. A harvester's dress with cleverly placed pockets and reinforced knees allows for movement and comfort during long workdays. A beekeeper's jacket honors generations of craft while adding modern safety features. Each garment tells a story of collaboration between designer and wearer, city innovation and rural wisdom. Mendes credits much of her transformation to the valley itself, and particularly to local farmer Caio Santos, whose sustainable agricultural practices mirror her approach to ethical fashion. "Caio taught me that true success isn't measured by magazine covers or industry acclaim," she says. "It's measured by how your work serves the community, how it honors the land." Caio's voice softened on these lines, his eyes meeting Helena's with quiet pride. Patricia took the magazine next, continuing the article. "The The fashion industry has much to learn from Mendes's unlikely revolution. In an era of fast fashion and environmental devastation, her community-based approach offers a sustainable alternative. By producing locally using traditional techniques and designing for longevity rather than trends, she has created a model that is both economically viable and ecologically responsible. Plans are already underway for workshops to teach young people the textile traditions of their region, ensuring these skills aren't lost to modernization. A small storefront in the valley town will sell Mendes's designs directly to customers, with profits supporting local artisans. 6 months ago, I wrote a scathing review of Helena Mendes's runway show, calling her vision a farm fantasy disconnected from fashion reality. I was wrong. What I failed to see then, what the entire industry failed to see, was that Mendes wasn't rejecting fashion. She was evolving it, pushing it toward a more inclusive, sustainable and authentic future. As the sun sets over Vale, silencioso, painting the fields gold and silhouetting the mountains, I watch Mendes walking hand in hand with Santos along a dirt path. She looks nothing like the nervous designer I met in Sao Paulo, with her simple clothes and earth under her fingernails, yet she has never looked more at home, more certain, more queenly. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson of Helena Mendes's journey. Sometimes true royalty means having the courage to build your own kingdom, far from the courts and castles where others expected you to reign. The three of them stood in silence, for a moment after Patricia finished reading, the words settling around them like gentle rain. "He got it right," Helena finally said, wiping away tears. "He really understood what we're trying to do here." Caio put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Of course he did. It's impossible to miss when you see it through your eyes." Patricia beamed at them both. "I always knew you were special, Helena. From the time you were a little girl visiting this farm, seeing beauty in the simplest things. Now the world will know it too." The rest of the day passed in a blur of excitement and planning. Helena's phone, so quiet for months, suddenly buzzed with messages from old friends and colleagues who had seen the article. Even a few of the designers who had criticized her show reached out with congratulations and questions about her new approach. By evening, Helena was emotionally exhausted but deeply content. She and Caio sat on the porch swing at Patricia's house, watching fireflies emerge as darkness fell over the valley. "Are you happy with how the article turned out?" Caio asked, his fingers gently playing with her curls. "More than happy," Helena replied. "Ricardo could have written a revenge piece about the fallen designer, but instead he saw the truth of what we're building here. It feels like validation." "You didn't need his validation," Caio pointed out. "You already knew this path was right." Helena smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "True, but it's nice to have someone from my old world understand. Maybe it will help other designers think differently about fashion's purpose." They swung in comfortable silence for a while, the familiar sounds of night insects creating a peaceful backdrop. "What about your parents?" Caio finally asked. "Have they seen the article?" Helena sighed. "I sent them a copy express mail yesterday. No response yet. And if they don't approve?" There was no judgment in his question, only gentle concern. "Then they don't approve," Helena said firmly. "I've spent my whole life trying to meet their expectations. I'm done with that now." Caio nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Still, I hope they can see how happy you are here. How much you've accomplished." "Maybe someday," Helena said wistfully. "But I'm not waiting for their approval anymore. I have everything I need right here." The next morning brought another surprise, a delivery truck rumbling up the farm road, carrying bolts of organic cotton from a sustainable textile producer in the north. "I don't understand," Helena told the delivery man, checking the paperwork. "I never ordered these." "Note says they're a gift," he replied, handing her a small envelope. "All paid for, including delivery." After the truck departed, Helena opened the envelope and found a short note in elegant handwriting. "Helena, your article in Estilo moved me deeply. My company has been trying to connect traditional textile production with modern designers for years. These fabrics are sustainably grown and processed. I hope they find a worthy home in your creations. Would love to discuss a potential collaboration when you're ready. Warmly, Isabella Fernandez, CEO, Verde Textiles. Helena showed the note to Caio and Patricia, excitement building. Verde Textiles is one of the most respected sustainable fabric producers in Brazil, she explained. This could mean reaching so many more people with our approach. Patricia smiled knowingly. Your ripples are becoming waves, my dear. The following weeks brought more responses to the article. Emails from fashion students asking to apprentice, letters from rural communities in other regions asking about implementing similar programs, even inquiries from small sustainable fashion brands about potential partnerships. Helena set up a small office corner in her studio, carefully responding to each message, organizing her growing vision for what her work in the valley could become. What had begun as a personal healing journey was evolving into something much larger. One afternoon, as she was sketching designs for the upcoming workshop with valley teenagers, she heard a car approaching. Not Caio's familiar truck or Patricia's old vehicle, but something sleeker, more expensive. Looking out the window, her heart stuttered as she recognized her parents' luxury sedan. Taking a deep breath, Helena stepped outside to meet them. Judge Roberto Mendes emerged first, tall and imposing in his perfectly tailored suit, despite the dusty surroundings. Dr. Claudia Mendes followed, her critical gaze already scanning the farmhouse and outbuildings. Helena, her father nodded formally. You're looking different. Helena self-consciously touched her curly hair, now grown longer and wilder than she'd ever worn it in the city. Her simple cotton dress and bare feet must present quite a contrast to their memories of her sleek city appearance. Different good, I hope, she replied, trying to keep her voice light. What brings you all the way out here? You never mentioned you were coming. We saw the article, her mother said, her tone carefully neutral. We thought it was time to see this project for ourselves. Helena felt a mixture of hope and defensiveness rise within her. Well, you're just in time for lunch. Patricia is making her famous chicken stew. She led them inside, where Patricia greeted them with polite warmth, despite the obvious tension. Helena watched her parents take in the rustic farmhouse with its hand-woven rugs and simple furniture, so different from their modern Sao Paulo mansion. Helena has been a godsend, Patricia told them as they sat at the kitchen table. Her help around the farm, her connection with the community, she's brought new life to this old place. Helena's father nodded distractedly, clearly uncomfortable in the rural setting. Her mother maintained a tight smile, asking polite but distant questions about the farm and the valley. After lunch, Helena took them to see her studio. She watched their faces carefully as they entered the space, noting how their expressions changed when they saw her designs displayed along the walls. Professional, innovative, clearly the work of someone with vision and skill. These are quite interesting, her father admitted, examining a jacket with subtle traditional embroidery incorporated into its modern lines. The workmanship is excellent, her mother added, running a practiced eye over the stitching. And the materials seem to be high quality. They are, Helena confirmed, all locally sourced, sustainably produced. As she showed them her sketches and explained her workshops and plans for the small shop in town, Helena could see her parents exchanging glances, some unspoken communication passing between them. The article mentioned a man, her father finally said. A farmer. Santos, was it? Helena's chin lifted slightly. Caio Santos. Yes, he's been instrumental in helping me understand the valley, its needs and traditions. And he's more than just a professional connection, her mother stated more. Then asked. Yes, Helena said simply. We're together. Another exchanged glance between her parents. And his family. The article mentioned something about his father. Helena felt a flash of protective anger. His father made mistakes that hurt many people, including Caio. But Caio has spent his life rebuilding, creating something honest and good. He's the most honorable man I've ever known. Before her parents could respond, the studio door opened and Caio himself appeared, clearly having just rushed over after hearing about the visitors. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said, standing tall in the doorway. His work clothes were slightly dusty, but he carried himself with natural dignity. I wanted to introduce myself properly. I'm Caio Santos. Helena watched as her father assessed, Caio with the practiced eye of a judge, noting the calloused hands, the sun-weathered face, the direct gaze that met his without wavering. "Judge Roberto Mendez," her father replied, extending his hand. "And my wife, Dr. Claudia Mendez." Caio shook, their hands firmly. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. Helena speaks of you often." "Does she?" Claudia raised an eyebrow. "Hopefully not all bad." "She credits you for her persistence," Caio said smoothly, "and her attention to detail. Important qualities in both design and farming." Helena felt a surge of love for him. How effortlessly he found common ground, how he stood his ground without aggression or defensiveness. "Perhaps you could show us your farm," Roberto suggested, surprising everyone. "Since it seems to have played such a large role in my daughter's transformation." "I'd be honored," Caio replied. They drove in Caio's truck to his property, Helena's parents somewhat stiffly perched in the back seat, clearly unaccustomed to such rustic transportation. As they arrived, Helena held her breath, seeing the modest farmhouse and fields through her parents' eyes. But as Caio led them around, explaining his sustainable farming practices, the careful water management system he'd designed, the community seed-sharing program he coordinated, she saw something unexpected happening. Her father, always interested in systems and organization, began asking detailed questions. Her mother, despite her initial standoffishness, was visibly impressed by the medicinal herb garden Caio maintained using knowledge passed down from his grandmother. "You've created something impressive here," Roberto finally acknowledged as they stood overlooking fields of healthy crops. "Especially considering the challenges you must have faced after your father's situation." Caio nodded, accepting both, the compliment and the reference to his painful past. "Life gives us all challenges, sir. What matters is what we build from them." Helena saw her father's expression shift slightly, a grudging respect entering his eyes. By the time they returned to Patricia's for dinner, the atmosphere had changed. The conversation flowed more easily, with her parents asking genuine questions about Helena's work and the Valley community. After dinner, Helena found herself alone with her mother on the porch, while her father continued a surprisingly animated conversation with Caio about agricultural law reforms. "You really love it here, don't you?" Claudia asked, her voice softer than Helena could remember hearing in years. "I do," Helena confirmed. "It's not what I planned, but it's where I belong." Claudia was quiet for a moment, looking out at the darkening valley. "When I saw that article, I was prepared to come here and talk some sense into you, to remind you of all you were giving up, the connections, the opportunities, the lifestyle we worked so hard to provide." Helena waited, sensing there was more. "But seeing you today," her mother continued, "you're different, not just how you look, though that's changed too. You have a certainty about you that I've never seen before, a purpose." "I found my path." "Mom," Helena said gently, "it's not the one you would have chosen for me, but it's right for who I am." Claudia reached out, hesitantly touching Helena's wild curls. "I always tried to get you to straighten these," she said with a small smile. "But they suit you, actually. They always did." It wasn't a full approval, but it was an acknowledgement, perhaps the most her mother could offer right now. Helena accepted it with a grateful heart. When her parents finally departed the next day, the goodbye was warm, if still somewhat reserved. Her father shook Caio's hand with genuine respect, and her mother embraced Helena, whispering, "You've built something real here. I'm proud of you." As their car disappeared down the valley road, Helena felt a weight lifting that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying, the burden of seeking her parents' approval, of measuring her choices against their expectations. "That went better than expected," Caio said, putting his arm around her waist. Helena leaned into him. "They didn't exactly give us their blessing, but they didn't disown me either. For my parents, that's practically a standing ovation." He laughed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Baby steps." That evening, after a community dinner in town celebrating the success of the Estilo article, Caio drove Helena to their special spot by the river. The moon was full, casting silver light across the flowing water and illuminating the wildflowers that dotted the bank. "It's beautiful tonight," Helena breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. "Almost as beautiful as you," Caio replied, his voice, holding an unfamiliar note of nervousness. Helena turned to look at him, surprised by his tone. "Is everything okay? You've been quiet all evening." Kaio took her hands in his. "Everything is perfect, that's why—" He took a deep breath. "Helena, when you came to this valley, I thought you were just passing through. A city girl taking temporary refuge from a storm. I never imagined you would bring such light into my life, that you would see value in the things I value, that you would choose to build something here." Helena felt tears welling up at the sincerity in his voice. "Kaio, let me finish," he said gently, "before I lose my nerve." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box handcrafted from the same warm oak as her studio tables. "My grandmother gave me this before she died, said to save it for when I found my queen." Helena's breath caught as he opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful ring, a small diamond set in silver, surrounded by tiny blue stones the color of the valley wildflowers. "The diamond was my grandmother's," Kaio explained. "The blue stones are from the river. I had them set by Juon's son in town." He sank to one knee, looking up at her with eyes full of love. "Helena Mendes, queen of my heart and this silent valley, will you marry me? Build a life with me that combines your vision and mine, the best of your world and mine." Tears flowed freely down Helena's cheeks now. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Kaio. 1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose to take her in his arms, Helena felt the rightness of this moment, this choice, this future stretching before them. What had begun as an escape had become a journey home, to herself, to her true purpose, to the love she had never known, she was seeking. 6 months later, the valley witnessed a wedding unlike any it had seen before. Under an arbor of wildflowers and grapevines, with mountains standing witness in the distance, Helena and Kaio joined their lives officially. Helena wore a dress of her own design, simple but elegant, combining traditional valley weaving techniques with modern lines. Maria Silva had collaborated on the fabric, incorporating patterns that told the story of new beginnings and deep roots. Guests filled the meadow where the ceremony took place, valley families sitting alongside a small contingent from the city. Helena's parents sat in the front row, their expressions a mixture of lingering uncertainty and genuine happiness for their daughter. Ricardo was there with his camera, documenting the event for another Estilo feature. Even some of Helena's former fashion colleagues had made the journey, curious to see the new life she had built. Patricia, serving as Helena's matron of honor, beamed with pride. "I knew you were meant for something special," she whispered, as they waited for the ceremony to begin. "From the moment you arrived here with rain-soaked clothes and wounded eyes." When Helena walked down the aisle of wildflowers toward Kaio, she carried no traditional bouquet. Instead, her hands held a small basket containing seeds, corn from Kaio's first crop, cotton for her designs, wildflowers to feed the bees, herbs that healed, symbols of the life they would cultivate together. The ceremony was simple but profound, with vows that spoke of growth, resilience, and authentic love. As they exchanged rings, his a simple band of silver that matched hers, the valley itself seemed to approve, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of earth and growing things around. The gathered witnesses. "I once promised you would be treated like a queen here," Kaio said as part of his vows. "But you taught me that true royalty isn't about being served, but about serving something greater than yourself. I promise to rule beside you, not over, a kingdom of land, but a kingdom of purpose." Helena's voice was steady as she responded, "I came to this valley broken, thinking I had lost everything. You showed me that sometimes we need to lose the life we thought we wanted to find the life we were meant to live. I promise to build that life with you, season by season, harvest by harvest." The celebration that followed lasted late into the night, with tables set up in the meadow under strings of lights. Local musicians played traditional songs alongside the occasional city hit, creating a blend that mirrored the couple's union of different worlds. Helena's father surprised everyone by giving a toast that acknowledged his daughter's courage in finding her own path. "I spent years on the bench passing judgment," he said, raising his glass, "but my daughter has taught me that sometimes the measure of a life well lived isn't in its adherence to established rules, but in its authentic expression of one's true self. As the evening progressed, Helena found a moment to slip away with Caio to the edge of the celebration, looking out over the valley that had brought them together. "Happy?" he asked, his arm around her waist. "Beyond words," she replied, leaning, her head against his shoulder. "Although I do have some news that might make us even happier." Caio looked down at her, questioning. "I was going to wait, make some grand announcement," Helena said, placing his hand gently on her stomach. "But I wanted you to be the first to know. We're going to have a baby." The joy that spread across Caio's face was radiant in the moonlight. "A child," he whispered in wonder. "Our child." "A valley child," Helena nodded. "To inherit all of this. Not just the land, but the values, the traditions, the community." Caio pulled her close, his voice thick with emotion. "Our greatest creation yet." They stood together at the threshold of this new chapter, the sounds of celebration behind them, the peaceful valley before them, and the promise of new life between them. Helena thought about the long journey that had brought her here, from the painful humiliation of her failed fashion show to this moment of complete belonging. The city girl who had once cared so much about others' opinions had found her throne not in acclaim or status, but in purpose, community, and love. As they rejoined the celebration, hand in hand, Helena caught sight of the teenage girl from the festival, now one of her most promising apprentices. The girl raised her glass in a small salute, her eyes full of admiration and possibility. In that moment, Helena knew that her story wasn't just about personal redemption. It was about creating a new model of fashion, of success, of life that might inspire others to find their own authentic paths. Queen of the Silent Valley, not by birth or acclaim, but by choice and conviction. It was a title she would wear, with pride for all the days to come, as she and Caio built their kingdom of purpose, one season, one creation, one day at a time. And in the years that followed, as their family grew and their work expanded, drawing more young people back to traditional crafts, more designers to sustainable practices, more attention to the wisdom of rural communities, Helena would sometimes think back to that rainy day when she first arrived, broken, ashamed, running away. How could she have known that in losing everything she thought she wanted, she would find everything she truly needed? That in the silence of the valley, she would hear her own voice at last? As the valley prospered and their vision spread, Helena and Caio remained rooted in the simple truth that had brought them together. Real royalty wasn't about crowns or castles, but about living with purpose, loving with honesty, and creating beauty that served rather than dazzled. And in the end, that was a kingdom worth building, a legacy worth leaving, a story worth telling. The Queen of Silent Valley had found her forever home,